Los Angeles, New Year's Eve 2025. I'm a rideshare driver and I need to make some money. Conditions won't be great, the roads will be bad, but there will be fireworks. You'll get to see my dog in a raincoat. There's this chipmunk guy. Lots of cars driving around with their hazards on. This guy's gonna make sure my car smells like weed. Some people will go home early.
Hey, he went home 30 minutes ago before the fight started.
But we're gonna stay out late. We gotta make some money. New Year's Eve 2024, a year ago. I'm stuck in some traffic caused by the staging of the Rose Bowl floats the night before the parade. We're about 7 miles from the parade route. I was doing my first night of rideshare in about 4.5 years. Each fare was sending me further east to Riverside and San Bernardino counties. At one point, a passenger and I cruised through a feedlot near Ontario. I eventually made my way back to the city of LA where fares and profits would be higher. Around 2 a.m. I made more in the next 2 hours than I had the previous 8. But for a New Year's Eve haul, it was more like a busy Saturday, not the busiest night of the year. 2025 would have to be different. I had just gotten back from a 2,700-mile road trip to Texas with my dog. His screen name is Butch. We were driving my 2013 Mazda 3 with a 2-liter Skyactiv and a 6-speed manual. Its name is also Butch. I was really counting on New Year's Eve and Butch the car to deliver. By 4 p.m. on New Year's Eve 2025, I was in the car with both rideshare apps turned on. The forecast was bad, rain and flooding. I had already taken the dog on a nice long walk in his raincoat and then drank an entire pot of coffee. 2 cans of Red Bull were waiting for me in the car. There was a small surge in demand and I got a request to pick someone up in Pasadena. When I was within a block of picking them up, they canceled. And because it was a surge, I got $3 instead of $2. Luckily, another person needed a ride, a young man visiting home from his first semester in college. We chatted the whole time. He was studying economics. He didn't leave me a tip, but it was a decent fare, at over $1 a mile. It seems like you're frequently having to fight the apps. They want you to make as little money as possible, and you have to say no, and then eventually you might get a decent fare. After saying no to a lot of bad fares, I said yes to a mediocre fare, picking someone up on Beverly Boulevard. Navigation loves giving you a difficult left turn that is faster in theory than in practice. This Prius handled that by getting into 2 lanes of incoming traffic, almost getting hit by a truck.
Thanks for blocking me.
I relented to do a U-turn at the light, and it took a couple minutes, but I was finally going in the right direction. Only to find that the Prius was in the same spot I'd left him. I gave them a little honk to show my appreciation for their hard work, which is of course a stupid thing to do because you don't know who this guy is or why he's driving like an idiot.
The dude, what the
I handled that with grace and rushed over to pick up my passenger, who took about 7 minutes to get in the car, long after the app told me to cancel. But they were very nice and gave me a good tip, which nearly doubled my fare. As soon as I dropped them off, I had to go to the bathroom, because again I'd had an entire pot of coffee. And because the streets were wet, my shoes got wet. And so now every time I would touch the clutch pedal, it would make this sound. I got another mediocre request to drive someone up into the hills. We drove by the Beverly Center, which always reminds me of New Year's Eve 2019, when I was on track to make the most I ever have on a New Year's Eve, but it was foiled by some kids I picked up in this parking lot at the CVS. One of them was supremely drunk looking, and I gave them a very nice medical grade barf bag, which they didn't use. They instead decided to roll down the window on the 101, puke inside the door frame, and then get puke on the seat. So the early hours of 2020 were all about cleaning the car so I could finish paying rent. Anyway, we're driving up Laurel Canyon, which is basically a mountain road. We think of it as a hill, but these are the Santa Monica Mountains, and this is the intersection with Mulholland. A little slippery. I dropped off my passenger, lost cell phone reception, then regained it, and then got a fare request to pick someone up in North Hollywood and take them to Long Beach. The footage for this next fare is going to be sped up about 5,000%. We're going to cover 43 miles in less than 30 seconds. It wasn't a very good fare, at less than $1 a mile, but I saw later that the young lady had to pay over $100 for it, so I can understand why she didn't tip. It was an expensive ride. Like a lot of passengers that night, she made me wait past the point that the app tells you to cancel the ride, a little over 6 minutes. But she had a good excuse. She needed to get her umbrella. She was dressed very nicely to go to a party. I hope she had a good time.
I think that's...
That sensor beep wasn't covering up profanity, just covering up the passenger's voice. The next fare was an older couple, a man who talked about how DUIs used to be no big deal, and a woman who was absolutely terrified of driving in the rain. I dropped them off in Orange County where it wasn't raining, and they left me a nice tip. Then I went to Walmart to use the bathroom. Demand was surging in nearby Anaheim and Huntington Beach, but I got a text from my roommate that Butch the dog refused to go outside to use the restroom before my roommate left for the evening. It had been about 7 hours since his last walk, so I put some destination trip filters on back to LA. These trips are usually less profitable, but luckily a young lady needed a ride to a church in South LA, where it was once again raining. She gave me a good tip though, so it worked out. The next fare was less profitable, but it was headed in the right direction. From South LA to a neighborhood with one of the more evocative names I can remember, the Byzantine Latino Quarter, which is just west of downtown. Taking the ramp from the 110 north to the 10 west, we got a nice little fireworks show put on by what I assume is a private individual. You'll see more fireworks on the 4th of July than New Year's, but LA is a year-round, illegal fireworks kind of town. You're always playing the game of were those fireworks or were they gunshots? And you can tell the difference, and they're almost always fireworks. After dropping off my passenger, who didn't tip, I drove back to Northeast LA to check on the dog and maybe have a bite to eat. Traffic wasn't too bad. When I got home, I wasn't surprised to find that Butch the dog very much had to go to the bathroom. I don't know why he told my roommate he didn't need to go to the bathroom, but he did, so we went outside in his little raincoat and he did his business, and then I made myself a quesadilla before getting back in the car. I quickly got a fare taking a group of 3 young women to the northern tip of the valley, about 28 miles away, near Pacoima. I then got another fare, taking someone else back to where we had just come from, Northeast LA, 25 miles. This time we're going to drive through the Verdugo Mountains. They look like this when it's not raining. Everything is green now, though. It's very nice. For those curious, that's the 210 to the 2 South to the 134 East to Eagle Rock and now Highland Park. The next fare was driving a couple from Highland Park to Echo Park, 8 miles away. We're about to go up the very steep Ewing Street with a grade between 30 and 32 degrees. Even on a dry day, you need a bit of momentum to get up. Prior to hitting those bumps, the male passenger had been criticizing his date for her choice of routes to his home. He then criticized me for hitting those bumps, which I couldn't see, and given the poor conditions, maintaining momentum and traction was more important. We then passed Baxter, which by some accounts is the 6th steepest street in the country. It used to be a 2-way, but navigation apps started sending people that way to save time, in theory anyway, and because of the poor visibility, people would crash into parked cars, drive into living rooms. There are 2 or 3 streets that are steeper than Baxter in LA, but they don't get the same kind of traffic. I dropped the passengers off, and they didn't leave a tip, and so I headed to Sunset to wait for what I would hope would be some good fares, which didn't come. Turns out 11:30 p.m. would have been a better time to walk the dog and have a bite to eat than 10 p.m. There weren't any good fares coming my way, and I was afraid to take a bad one and miss a good one, so I cruised down Sunset to Chinatown. past the most expensive gas station in the city. That's 87 octane for $7.89. It's across the street from the post office, so I think only people with fuel cards use it. And there's Union Station and driving by Plaza Olvera. This is the oldest part of LA and a popular spot for demonstrations and protests. I went to a few last summer. By midnight, I was in Chinatown watching fireworks go off at Grand Park. I decided to head that way and go up North Hill Street, remembering what it was like in June when the troops were here. One of the benefits of a compact car is basic maneuverability. You can get around road debris, small explosives, just do a quick little U-turn, not a big deal. Back to the early minutes of 2026, we're heading over to Grand Park, just having a New Year's Eve party. It's a very nice park, starts up at Grand Street and goes down several blocks to the City Hall building. It has lawns and areas for rallies, demonstrations. Did you know it costs $3,000 an hour for LAPD to run a chopper? They have 17 of them. Here's a detention center. This is what it looked like in June. That sound is your phone alerting you to a regional curfew. There's near constant demonstrations happening outside the detention center. There was always a lot of police presence and, for a time, troops. Tonight, it's calm, and there aren't any good ride requests coming my way. Until somebody in Mount Washington, that's right, back up in Northeast LA, needed a ride. Mount Washington is a hilly, steep neighborhood composed of hilly and steep, narrow streets. The couple made me wait outside about 7 minutes, and then I got to do a nice, slippery, steep hill start. Pretty good. No wheel spin, no stalling. They were very nice. The lady was recounting a story. She told it several times, but I never understood it. That involved the phrase, hit his nuts. She said hit his nuts about 30 times. Here's another rainy hill start. But they were very nice and gave me a good tip. I then got the most profitable ride of the evening, but it was 15 minutes away and a lot of people were canceling on me. So I raced over to West Hollywood, where a bar was letting out.
Nick, he went home 30 minutes ago, before the fight started.
Apparently there was a big brawl. Women, men, dozens of people. All started because someone said another person looked like Borat, or called that person Borat, and then everyone started fighting. But the people I was driving were very nice, and they left me a very good tip. And it was the best fare of the night, about $54 total. Dropped them off in Northeast LA and quickly picked up another group. This time a couple of young men who decided to smoke a joint behind my car, sort of put it out, and then get inside and stink up the joint. Another rainy hill start. I was taking them to Chinatown. Kind of a familiar pattern this evening. Downtown, Northeast LA, Hollywood. And they didn't give me a tip, but whatever. While I was driving them, I got another request that I thought said either Baldwin Hills or Baldwin Village, which is near Culver City and very busy, but it was actually Baldwin Park, which is 20 miles east in the suburbs and not very busy, even though the app said it was a busy area. By the time they were in my car, I had realized my mistake and that I was taking myself out of the game. These hours were the most profitable, usually, the entire year, and here I was driving 20 miles east into the suburbs, and I wasn't even going to get a tip. But they were nice young ladies who needed a ride home. After I dropped them off, I stopped to drink a Red Bull and think strategy. I happened upon a weird Christmas display with Snoopy, Santa, and Chipmunk Dude. I once again set some destination filters back towards LA. And then I drove past this curb, which kind of freaked me out at the time. I remember thinking, they should paint that yellow. I thought I was going to hit it, but I think I was just getting tired. I had my second Red Bull, trying to keep my wits about me. Every fare request I got felt like it was designed to keep me away from high-demand areas. And then this Escalade was going slow in the left lane. Come on, guys. Left lane's for passing. Get it together. I made my way back to the city of LA and got a good fare again. This time picking some people up from a warehouse area near the bridge downtown.
Hi.
Got to impress this boat-like Honda Accord with my superior turning radius. Forget about this stupid Suburban. Took these lovely people back to Hollywood. They gave me a nice tip. I got to watch this Mitsubishi Mirage flash its hazards for no apparent reason other than they're scared. I dropped the nice people off who tipped me well, and then got another fare, taking a young man to Venice, where it was coming down pretty hard for a while there. Dropped him off, and then got another fare, picking up a handsome young couple, also in Venice, and taking them to Beverly Hills. These fares weren't hugely profitable, although I'm sure they were very expensive for the passengers. They just kept coming, one after the other. We passed the Beverly Center again, and the parking lot where the Puke Trio came from. You know those slideshow videos your phone gives you unsolicited, where it takes photos you took and makes a sort of sentimental video out of them? My phone did that with all the pics I took of the interior of my car covered in puke when I was trying to get a cleaning fee. I'd share it, but it's pretty gross. My next fare were some young kids that I picked up at a hotel. They made me wait about 7 minutes before they got in my car at the last second. Remember this drive being pretty hairy? That's a abandoned Camry. The kids were calling people in other time zones, saying Happy New Year, asking for charging cables, and requesting for Beyonce on the radio. Our exit was flooded.
Okay, we got a fire up here.
And it was also a fire. I was just trying to make sure we weren't driving into too deep of water. There's some stuff floating right there on the left. But it wasn't too bad. The fire these gentlemen had built didn't seem like a good idea, but given the rainy conditions, I thought it probably wouldn't expand. This is coincidentally right next to where there was a really bad pallet fire under the I-10 freeway a couple years back. Shut it down for a while they fixed it. I don't think there was any real risk of that tonight, but still not a great idea. I dropped these nice young kids off at this sort of unregulated after-hours rave situation near Skid Row. It's a popular after-hours area. God knows what happens. The second can of Red Bull had worn off, but I thought I still had an hour or two of driving in me, and at least as much gas. My next fare was going to take me past Sam's Hofbrau, a restaurant/strip club that I used to think was only a restaurant. My passenger was a man probably close to my age. He had talked about how he initially wasn't going to leave the house for New Year's, but here he was, getting picked up at 5 a.m. at an industrial area. He passed out soon after he got in the car, and we headed to his house, near the edge of northeast East LA, not far from my house. Unfortunately, there was an accident up on the road, and we got stuck in some traffic. Coming to a complete standstill on the freeway after driving for 13 hours in the rain is always unwelcome, but it gave me time to think that maybe I was pretty lucky tonight. I didn't have anybody puke in the car, nobody physically assaulted me, I didn't get in an accident, and at no time did I worry if one of my passengers was defecating in the car. So all in all, a pretty good New Year's Eve. And I was about to pass the coin wash where I cleaned the vomit out of my car back in 2020. There it was. But I didn't need to go there tonight. No, sir. I was done. I guess. I was exhausted and hungry, which meant fast food. McDonald's French fries sounded really good. But it was breakfast time, and I didn't want breakfast. So I went home to have another quesadilla. As is often the case after a really long night of driving like that, I felt defeated and was questioning what I was doing with my life. Butch the dog was a little upset with me for coming home so late.
I'm sorry. I know it's late.
My goal leading up to New Year's was to get around 600, and I got 484, which is almost double what I had made the previous New Year's. Considering how LA normally stays home when it rains, and how most of the fares I was offered were not very good, I did pretty well. There were a couple of strategic missteps, but overall, not bad. The car's computer had suggested my efficiency for New Year's Eve was 32.1 mpg, with 30 miles on the tank left. After filling up on New Year's Day because I needed to make some more money, the numbers turned out to be closer to 35 mpg, with over 100 miles left in the tank. Very good for a 13-year-old car that isn't a hybrid, especially when you consider that I probably spent 2 to 3 hours idling. A week later, one of the apps gave me $200. Apparently, they had taken too much in fees the week of New Year's Eve. And because New Year's Eve was about half of what I had made that week, that means over $100 of that could be added to my total for the evening, bringing it to around $600. So, I feel pretty good about that. My only hope is that next year, I'm not in a position where I need to beat it. Please like and subscribe for more. Thank you for watching.